Hey everybody, it's New Brew Thursday!
Woo! And we are here in the beer geek, orgasm
Heaven.
dream come
Mecca.
true right here. This is like a beer geek's wet dream right here.
Pretty much.
And we're in Dr. Bill's coveted cellar. I've seen pictures of it on Flickr. I'm actually here now.
And I changed my underwear twice.
With each new beer, we go a
maybe.
little more crazy. But you are known as having one of the largest privately held collections of beer in the United States, the world, universe.
I mean, I'm sure there's people that have surpassed me at this point,
Right.
but I've had well over 1,200 beers in my cellar for 25 years. So
Wow.
I can guarantee you.
So before all the cool kids started doing it.
At a certain point, I had probably more than anybody, and I've had up to 3,500 beers. So I'm sure.
I think at this point I'm at 35.
I used to. Well, it's funny because when I started drinking beer more aggressively with craft beer and exploring and whatever, I would have like a 6-pack or 12-pack in my fridge, and it would be like, oh, there's beer in my fridge. I'm gonna drink it until there's no more beer, and then I'm gonna go to sleep on the couch and whatever. Right. And now, because we've gone into this whole thing and we've started thinking about aging beer and whatnot. My whole house is full of beer everywhere, and it's like, oh, I can't drink that.
It really is.
I can't drink this.
You go in his office and you're like, what the hell?
You got to get a lot. You got to get a lot of beer. My problem is, I mean, I would have a huge. I probably buy 3,000 to 5,000 bottles of beer every year. Cool. So
Wow.
I mean, and I've gone some years. I've bought 10,000 bottles of beer when I was having my parties back in the day. So I mean, unfortunately, or fortunately for everybody else, I drink a lot of them and have a lot of parties. So that's always a good time to do that.
We are going to be doing something that's a little bit different this time. We're going to be drinking some rare beers, but our first, because we want to keep it somewhat to the masses. So we're doing the Gueuze Girardin.
Yeah, Girardin Gueuze.
And one of the biggest, and I'm going to take a moment to tangent just a little bit. One of the biggest complaints that we've gotten is that I mispronounce beer all the time on this show.
I mispronounce beer all the time too.
And
I think that's just something that's going to happen.
Yeah, because I don't speak Belgian. I don't speak, these different
unless
languages.
you speak Dutch, Flemish, Italian,
You're not going to be able to
Japanese.
pronounce some of these.
Now there's so many great craft beers in so many different countries, unless you learn languages for a living.
You know all the slang and everything.
And spend, I could probably spend time with the proper pronunciation, but I'd rather know
Enjoy
what
the
the beer
beer.
is
Yeah.
and be able to tell people about the
Exactly.
beer and let them correct me if I'm dropping a
Right.
syllable or something.
I think we earlier we were discussing Pliny the Elder, and
Yes.
that it's supposedly supposed to be Pliny the
Well,
Elder.
it's Plinius. Plinius was
his name, right?
Historian, mathematician,
The
soldier,
guy that discovered hops and
Yeah. So yeah, Plinius. But
I
we're
like
not speaking
Pliny
Latin,
the
are
Elder.
we? We're speaking
Pliny
English.
the Elder is way better to say anyway. So,
Give me a Pliny.
But so we're here. We're drinking this now. This is a Gueuze,
Right.
which we have not done on the show yet, but all three of us have really started getting into.
Gueuzes are known as a Belgian beer. They are primarily found in the Seine River Valley, and just outside of Brussels. And there's one famous Lambic producer, Lambic being the overall catchphrase for all the beers that the Gueuze falls into. And there's one famous producer, Cantillon, in Brussels itself, and the rest are all out in this little valley, and they're all spontaneous fermentation. So where normally you go to a brewery, it's sterile like an operating room suite. They don't want to get infection, they don't want any bacteria, they're cleaning it constantly. When you go into a Lambic producer, the windows are open, there's cobwebs everywhere.
The brewer's swimming around in the vat of beer.
There's pretty much. I mean, there's spider webs, there's everything.
Is there a difference between a lambic and a regular beer that would allow you to just let it ferment out in the open like that?
The region that they're in is a lot of pasture land, a lot of fruit orchards, things like that. So the wild yeast that they've been using there that have gone into their barrels that they age the beer in for 1 to 3 years, that beer has shown that it is very friendly for this kind of beer, and it sours it. The different bacterial strains, they sour it, and they promote and they make great beers. People in the United States have tried to do this, and some of them fairly successfully. But, for example, if we were in downtown LA and we had a brewery and we put beer in a barrel and just opened the windows,
yeah, dear God,
it's not going to necessarily come out with the flavor profiles we want.
Yeah, it'll have some unique flavors.
Different Lambics, they've recognized, there's a little of the 91 on there on the nose. But they've come out, they've found hundreds, literally, of different strains of bacteria in the beers. And so what they do, they get the beers brewed, and there's blenders and there's brewers. And so they take the base beer, they put it in barrels from 1 to 3 years. And once they're multiple years, then they blend the beer. So a classic Gueuze could be a blend of a 1 and a 3-year-old Lambic. Lambic being the base beer. And then you have the different fruit Lambics, which are Kriek. The most classic are Kriek and Framboise, which are cherry and raspberry. And that's where they add whole fruit into the barrels when they make it and age it. And then they blend it and they do it.
And so the Gueuzes are generally the blends of the Lambic,
Just the straight Lambic.
Right.
Yes, it could be, there's like Gueuzes that are 1 and 3 years. There's ones that they've done where it's like 2 and 3 years, 1 and 2 years. There's young Gueuzes. There's Gueuzes that different blenders have or breweries have combined some of each of their product and do mega blends.
Okay.
So there's all kinds of different variations, but basically, to be a Gueuze, it's made in that area. It's kind of just like champagne is made in a region. A true Lambic is made that. I call American Lambics Plambics.
Plambics.
Yeah.
Okay.
So because they're not in that region, but when they blend them, that's what you get.
Now the most popular style of wild yeast is usually Brettanomyces.
Well, Brettanomyces.
That's like the one that they've captured and use like.
Right. Well, Brettanomyces is very common, used in American brewers especially, but also originally in Belgian brewers. And that's where you get the horse blanket.
Right.
The barnyard, the horse blanket.
Cat
the
urine.
really, the really funky. And cat urine's a pretty common actual profile for hops.
Right.
There's certain hops that have that distinct cat urine odor. Now, those maybe sound gross to the average person, but when they're coming, these beers are fabulous. It's just like saying champagne is biscuity, and when you smell a great champagne, it's biscuity. Well, with these beers, you want to have funk. So there could be there's usually different bacterial strains in them, and Lambicus, Brucellanus, things like that. But Brettanomyces is definitely something. There's Saccharomyces.
It's almost becoming a shortened form, like saying, "Oh, this is a Brett beer."
Yeah.
And so, all the sours kind of fall into that.
Well, what's
category.
happened now is brewers, especially here, because America is so creative with doing all the different style ranges that are found in the world, they've either cultured the different yeast strains off of bottles, they've cultured them, or there's places like White Lab that has all these different yeast strains.
Right.
So when you say they've cultured it off the bottle, that means they've taken it.
Yeah, they've
out
literally
of
taken.
the bottle?
Yeah, they've literally had a little bit, cultivated it, and pulled as the yeast is still alive because it's bottle fermented.
Right.
And
it reproduces.
they've been able to culture it.
Wow. That's
Well, you
pretty
remember
cool.
when
And I'm not a brewer, so I don't.
Right.
Forgive
You remember,
me
at
if
the
I'm
brewery
dropping
when we did our
technical
episode
terms,
there, they talked about the batch of yeast that failed, and somebody had happened to save just a little bit of it, and they were able to restart the entire thing.
Oh
with
yeah,
a little bit.
I can see having a little bit of yeast. But the fact that it's in the bottle and you can just take it out and still use, that's pretty
nowadays,
cool.
big craft brewers most big craft brewers, like somebody like Adam Avery at Avery Brewing in Colorado, they have a lab. They have a little room that's a lab. New Belgium has a lab in Colorado. Stone has a lab down in Escondido. Those places, they have a little lab. They keep them. And a lot of the places, when they brew a very successful beer, they'll keep those yeast in a yeast bank separate, kind of like putting it in a safety deposit box.
Cryo freeze it or
so I'm not sure what the process is maintaining it, but basically they'll put it somewhere for safekeeping. Because there has historically been in the last 30 years places that have lost their yeast strains through fires, damages, things like that. So they do that. Now the Belgians here that do this, they care less. They just open the window.
Get some more. Bring in the yeast. Well, we've talked about this beer a lot, and I think we need to crack them and start drinking some of it.
I've already cracked mine because I was
As
just
we're
eating some.
cracking this, what does the 1882 refer to then?
1882, I believe, is the founding of the Girardin.
Oh, love that sound. And John will give you a little bit more
Hook
there.
it up. Sweet. Want a little more? Anybody?
This is
Now-
good
Oh,
because I like
see
to keep some room in my glass.
Yes. Now, that's one thing that I like about the Belgian style glassware is that a lot of times the brewery is printed at where you need to like leave.
Yeah, they definitely do this.
Leave your
And this
line.
is not a Girardin glass, but it's a glass we were drinking a fabulous beer in earlier. So,
Cheers.
oh,
Cheers.
cheers, everybody. Gueuzes are once your palate acclimatizes itself to the gueuze, which as I've heard you guys say on previous episodes, something I had shown you way back was the 3 sips. You always want to do the 3 sips. You want to put it in your palate. You want to clear your palate. So you want to put beer in your mouth, swish it around vigorously. That cleanses your palate from whatever you had previously. The previous beer, the cigarette you just smoked, the nicotine gum you're chewing, the toothpaste, things like that. Then you want to put beer on the front of your mouth and part your lips and pull air over it and hopefully not dribble on your shirt, and that will open up your palate. And then the third taste will give you the true taste of the beer. Because when you're drinking something like this, which is considered a sour ale, the first taste can be off-putting because it's really sour.
Right.
But by the time you get to that third sip, your palate is open, clean, and refreshed, and you're tasting the true characteristics of this. When it comes to gueuzes, I look at 2 different kind of branches, and this is one that I like to call the iced tea. There's ones that are more acidic, that are much more extreme as far as sour. Yeah, they give you your rear palate. You pick up back in here. This particular producer, Frank Bone, and Drie Fontainen, they do one that has this kind of tea-like flavor to me. I pick up this tea, lemon, and it's a more subtle but also very complex. So
it's almost like
also
a
very nice.
Jack Nicholson tea. When they mix the Arnold
Palmer.
Palmer. I knew it was a golfer of some sort. Where they mix the lemonade with the tea a little bit, so you get that tanginess.
Yeah, exactly. You get tanginess, but you get this more well-rounded flavor profile.
Right. So with this beer, we have ceviche, and we have a few different types of cheeses. But as we were talking earlier, 2 will work and 2 will not.
Right. Yeah, different. That's one of my things I've been doing for about 20 years is pairing beer and food. And I pair wine and food. I pair spirits and food. But beer is by far the most food friendly. It has much more complexity than any of the other types of beverages that you can have, whether they're alcoholic or non-alcoholic. Beer, you have the ability to roast malts, and when you roast a grain and make it a malt, and when you do that, you have a whole palate range of characteristics, let alone with the cheeses. Perfect with cheeses, but all kinds of food, but also let alone with the yeast strains, with the flavor profiles that brings out, and then also the hops. And then on top of that, you also have not really adjuncts, but in a craft brewing, you add things which are considered adjuncts, but they're used to benefit the beer.
Proper adjuncts. Yeah.
Exactly, not the improper adjuncts.
Right.
So this beer pairs amazingly well, I feel, with ceviche. It pairs well with other seafoods. Classic seafood dish in Belgium is mussels, done in lambic, and they're steamed in lambic as opposed to white wine, and they come out fabulously. And certain cheeses go well. I feel that soft goat cheeses go fabulously with gueuzes, and also washed rind cheeses go well just overall with Belgian ales that have any funk to them, whether they're saisons or, in this case, a gueuze.
Now, I like to have apples with goat cheese. Would that work with this? Or would the apple
yeah, you
flavor
could do,
throw it off?
you know what would be interesting? What we're doing is not contrasting the flavors, we're complementing the flavors with these particular flavor profiles. So what you could definitely do is use a green apple with the cheese, and it'll go really well with the cheese, and it will complement the
You get the tang, the sour of the green apple with that. Oh, that's excellent.
I could see that, yeah.
Okay. Now, you have a ceviche dish at the bistro.
Yes.
And
tilapia ceviche,
which is very good. What would you recommend on your standard list of, like, if I'm going to sit down and eat the ceviche?
You mean on my 121 beers I have available?
The amazing list of beers that you have. But the ones that, like, if I come in there 6 months from now, I'm going to find this beer on tap or in bottle, whatever. What would go amazing with the ceviche at the bistro?
Well, actually, another beer that favors very well with this would be Levitation, for example. It's a amber ale with a nice hop bill and a good malt background, so it goes really well with the ceviche, I feel.
Okay.
You may have noticed
Also,
I'm digging
Belgian
in.
Belgian wits. I usually have a Belgian wit on, which is
Okay.
Belgian wheat beer that has usually a flavor profile of orange and coriander. That goes really well with ceviche.
Okay.
And any of the numerous saisons that you can interchange that I would have. And, of course, I have quite a few gouzes, too. So.
And the nice thing about the bistro is that you will generally see Dr. Bill wandering through, helping people pick beers and suggesting beers for you to drink. So they should feel free to
Always.
say, hey,
Yeah.
come over here and pair my beer for me.
So what do you think of this?
It's great.
The pairing.
That pairs really well.
Yeah.
It's
Because there's some citrus, like some
Yeah.
kind of lemon or something in the ceviche that I think complements
Well, yes.
well.
There's obviously ceviche is produced by the acid from the whatever citrus they use to do it. I'm just diving in, guys.
I've never had
Don't mind me.
ceviche.
Don't like this.
Really?
You've never had ceviche?
I don't think so.
Wow.
Have I had
What was
ceviche?
the other thing we
No.
had that you had never had? Oh, it was the Cherry Jubilee.
Oh yeah, I've never had that either. Yeah. I'm really missing out on life apparently.
Now,
Have you had goose? I'm sorry. Have you had goose before?
Yes, we had. What was it?
at La Trappe up
Was
in San
that
Francisco.
Rene Cuvée?
Lindemann's Rene Cuvée.
That's a goose? Yeah.
That's
yeah.
a place we
That was
should-
really
that's,
good.
We should shoot it.
That's kind of a training wheel goose.
Yeah.
Well, it worked.
Yeah. Exactly. So you notice that this brings out a softness to the goose.
Mm-hmm.
It cuts into the acidity,
Does.
and
Yeah.
it just makes it really smooth on the mid palate and comes.
You
in
get
and
less
it
of the
makes-
pucker and more
Yeah.
of the sour qualities that
Yeah,
you want.
sour,
from it.
and it's creamy, and it's such a nice balance with
Yeah,
them.
absolutely.
And there's a little bit of heat in the ceviche, and it's just fabulous.
Now we were talking a little bit earlier about pairings, and one of the things that we do that you slapped my hand for was the crackers with the stuff. And
Yeah.
generally, like we have bread on the table here, but that's really just to kind of be a cleanser, and you should be
Right.
trying the stuff
when I do
individually.
when I do classes or when I do different beers or different things, you want to have neutral foods unless you're pairing them,
Right.
because you don't want to affect the beer. Like we do pre-shift in the morning at the bistro where we talk to all of our staff, our bartenders, servers, bussers. And the chef brings out the daily specials, and I do a bunch of beers, and I make them blind taste them. They're not allowed to have the food first because I don't want them having a fabulous barbecue pork sandwich and then trying to tell me what kind of beer I just poured them blindly. So they'll do that, and then they get to enjoy the goodies that we bring out.
What a horrible job to have to
Yeah.
be dragged in and blind taste beers all day long.
Now, don't get me wrong. When I have a party here and I have 45 cheeses out and white anchovies and all kinds of things, and where the bottles are flowing, we're not worried about pairing.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You can have whatever you want with whatever, and it doesn't matter. And you may say,
And that's when you can explore for
Right.
your own.
and you may have this great moment, or you might just go, I'm digging this IPA and I'm loving these anchovies, and they don't necessarily go, but they're not hurting it, and I'm going
Right.
to eat it right now.
Yeah.
I'm having a good
But
time.
when you're doing a pairing, and then I do, so what I was saying is, then I do sourdough bread, and I do special crackers, and all kinds of stuff. But if you're doing a pairing, and you want to pair one item with another item, you don't want a third item to get in the way
Right.
necessarily. So you don't want rosemary crackers right now to pair with, not that they probably wouldn't go fairly nicely, but or garlic crackers, for example. You wouldn't
Right.
want to do that if you're trying to pair.
Because you're adding a
goat
whole
cheese
other
with it.
flavor that's
Right,
not
element. And
involved.
so you're
in
not
the
going to
pairing,
get the
right.
true
You
effect
throw a
of the pairing.
sourdough bread
Yeah.
in there.
It's like
Exactly.
bringing your little brother on a date.
And sourdough bread,
Exactly like that.
sourdough bread, because we're doing complementary flavors with this particular beer, would probably go okay with this
Yeah.
due to the
what I was thinking.
sourness of the bread, even
Yeah.
though it's very mild.
Well, I need to try it with this goat cheese because I have not.
And you said some of the cheeses
That's what
would
you always
go.
say, because you always don't like the cracker. You always just
Well,
like
Okay, the reason I don't like the cracker is one, because sometimes it, like he said, it adds too much and it takes away from everything. But then it also dries my mouth out really quick, and I don't know if that affects anything with taste, but I just don't like it. It's really annoying.
Well, it is a
So-
palate cleanser. So the crackers, so that's why, usually I have water, which we didn't bring out here today. But, the water and the crackers will clear your palate and allow you to do that.
So if we're doing a show about one beer, there won't necessarily be a reason to cleanse my palate unless I'm going to pair it with another type of
If you're doing
cheese
really
or something.
extreme flavor profiles, like say you're doing, like I've seen you guys do it where you're doing a cheese and a dessert. Now, you had the cheese and dessert that both went with the beer, but if you were doing octopus and you were doing creme brulee, You probably
Right.
want to cleanse your palate.
Okay, that's what I meant. So
Yeah.
it's not just for switching beers; it's also for switching anything that you're going to
Switching
pair up
the
with
pairing.
beer.
Food as well.
Now, did you say some of these cheeses weren't, or one cheese doesn't really go?
Well, Spanish goat cheese. I don't know. What's your opinion? You've had it now.
I like
This
it
was
actually.
great.
And that's
Yeah,
it. Really
I-
surprised me
yeah.
because
I felt
goat
like it
cheese
smoothed
always
it
comes
out.
as like almost a
put that on
dessert
bread?
cheese to
Right.
me. Very sweet.
I did both.
And I would never imagine that it would go well with this. And when it just totally smooths out this beer. It's amazing.
Yeah, it does, and I think it goes fabulously with it. The other beer that this will go really well, or excuse me, the other cheese that this beer will go really well with is the Chimay wash rind cheese,
Right.
which is a wash. Basically, that's what it is, beer washed, but it's wash rind, and it's got a little funkiness to it, and that's what you want to have when you're drinking,
yeah.
saisons or lambics. Now, I haven't necessarily paired these two particular things, but I'm thinking it's going to bring out more floral notes in the beer with the cheese. So
This
It's
cheese
a very
is
earthy
great.
cheese.
I think this goes really well.
Yeah, I like that a lot actually.
The goat cheese?
No, the Chimay washed. I mean, I like the goat cheese too.
Oh
but
wow,
Yeah,
that's different.
that's a
the
whole
Chimay?
different experience. Yeah.
You don't even get the.
So with the
contour.
Chimay, you get this really funky barnyard flavor, and then when you have this mellows out the Chimay, but it doesn't. See, you want the beers
Totally,
and
yeah.
food to either complement or contrast, but you want them both to stay present. What's a failure is if it makes an off-putting flavor to either the beer or the food, or if one of them totally disappears.
You know.
Everybody's palate's different. I always find notes in my beers that are different. I've been doing this a long time, and I don't know, 30,000 beers under my belt, literally, and
And that's just this afternoon.
and food and doing pairings and things. So it's funny. You can find all kinds of amazing things. Like I'm doing these pairing series at Stone right now, and I'm doing beers and chocolates. I'm doing beer and sushi. I'm doing beer and sushi, but instead of doing beers that you would find in sushi bars,
Right.
I'm finding pairing notes with Doppelbocks,
Really?
with imperial stouts, things like that with sushi, and you would never consider
Crazy.
that. But they're just amazing. So it's all
Rebel.
about the exploration for you.
Right.
You want to do it. I can taste something usually and go, okay, I want this beer and maybe that beer, and one of them will always work. But that's
Right.
just because if you do it long enough, you get an encyclopedic
Right.
knowledge
Did you
of
did you
doing it.
see our Pangea show?
I did not. That's the only one I have not seen on that.
Didn't we do sushi with
We
that?
did.
Yeah, we did sushi
Oh,
with
did
that
you?
one.
It went great.
Yeah.
It was
Did it?
awesome.
Well, because the Pangea has a really
The
strong
ginger.
ginger up front.
Right. Ginger,
Yeah.
oh, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So that's going to go well.
He's
They have
like,
a lot
I
of
scoff at
spices.
your sushi pairing.
No.
IRS.
Hey, it was a very bold move bringing the Antarctic water in
Yeah.
with the sushi, though. But no.
That's awesome.
Yes, the ginger in there is great. Yes, so that would be
So
very complimentary.
one of the things that our viewers are going to be able to now benefit from is
Right.
your 30 plus years of experience with food and beer and whatever, because
Drum roll.
every week we're going to have Dr. Bill on the show teaching you how to do amazingness for your guests.
Boom.
And it's going to be awesome and amazing.
Yeah, I'll do my best to help you guys any way I can, and
And we've always when I get into a conundrum, I'll direct message you on Twitter, and you're always quick to respond, which is awesome. And and you've made that open invite to people out there to say, contact me, let me know what you're doing. And I love the fact that you're so willing to get involved with the craft beer community and be helpful. And
well, I've always been involved, and I've converted tens of thousands of people probably over the last 30 years. And whether it's craft beer, wine, spirits, whatever, you name it, I'm all for people finding their way through this and helping them. And, so yeah, I have no problem with people contacting me, calling me. I had people call me the other day, and they were in Europe, and they forgot the time change. And I was like, I answered the question, and I went back to bed.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's fun. It's fun
I just
for
said
me,
I was
so
in
have no
Europe. I
problem.
was really just kind of drunk at it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Gutter call. Okay, I thought so. Nice to meet you, Flavio.
And on Twitter, he's your bistro beer.
Bistro beer.
At
Twitter.
Bistro Beer, yes.
So you can just hit him up on
So,
Twitter.
yeah,
And
Twitter's not
And
a problem at all.
both you and Ray Daniels of late have started doing a lot more educational things with your Twitter, which is awesome.
Right. Yeah, I like to throw out little trivial.
Little Trivial
of
Pursuit.
information. Yeah.
Like if we
Little-
ever had a
little
beer Trivial
nuggets of
Pursuit, these would be the
information.
questions.
Yeah. I like to throw out little bits of information for people, like the first craft beer bar, or the first, things like that. That's always interesting.
Right on.
And it keeps people. I like to get replies and information coming back at me. So you know what? This is really good. But since I do have my cellar behind us, we should definitely try something.
Yeah,
stupid
I'm
or
thinking that now it's time.
stupid
Yeah,
extreme.
now it's time that we just make all of our viewers ultra jealous and break out something that will just make them weep openly.
You want to do that?
Yes. I
So
say
we'll
we
be
do
back
that. We'll be
in
back in just one moment
2
with something
seconds.
that will
And it will,
destroy your mind.